Welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I am the founder of the Bobby White Foundation and your host, along with my co-host.
I'm Bonnie Snyder.
Welcome. First off, we want to thank again WeBeam TV for allowing us this platform to come and speak to you about a very difficult subject. We've partnered with Kindest to help do some fundraising for us so that we can continue to bring this program to you. And actually, Kindest this week donated $100 to the Bobby White Foundation.
Nice.
That was really sweet of them. So we really want to support them also. And again, for the month of March, right? Okay. Greg Schindler's State Farm office is running a fundraiser for us. So if you need an insurance quote, want to do some quote comparisons, give his office a call and mention the Bobby White Foundation, and they will donate for each call or each whatever it is thing that you'll get from each quote. Yeah, that's it. So again, we want to thank Greg Schindler and his State Farm office. So today we're going to kind of almost finish up this book that we've been going over, but first off, I just kind of wanted to talk about this week. We just had St. Patrick's Day.
We did.
And I don't know for you, but for our family, it was St. Patrick's Day was always kind of a big thing for my in-laws. My father-in-law's birthday was on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, okay.
So, and actually my cousin and I were talking at the beginning of the week about making corned beef and cabbage for, St. Patrick's Day. And I hadn't really done it since Bobby passed away. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to this year. And come to the realization, I never had it as a child growing up. My mom never made corned beef and cabbage. Ever. And so it wasn't until I got married that it, became a tradition.
I want to back up for a minute, and take a moment also to thank the viewers. Those of y'all who, tune in every week, to, support the show, watch the show, get something out of it. We couldn't do this without them as well.
Yes, and we know and we understand that a lot of times it may be difficult for you to sit maybe through a whole show. We have our moments too, but we really do appreciate it, and this is why we want to keep it real, because it's you guys out there too.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Tammy. It's a difficult, for some people, this is a difficult topic to talk about. It's, a difficult subject. For, some people, it does conjure up a lot of, negative emotions. But there's power in communication. There's power in voice. There's, a power in verbalizing. We always hear, face your fears, face your demons, face your challenges. And, again, I'm glad, it's a blessing to have this platform, to, take the stigma and not, so much normalizing, but on the same time, same token, normalizing, this discussion. I remember growing up how many different topics, especially, the mental health realm, that were taboo topics. You didn't talk about mental health, in certain, in some families, you didn't talk about mental health. You didn't talk about abuse. You didn't talk about, addiction. These were, the, quote unquote, dirty little secrets.
Right.
That we, kept pushed, in a corner, or it was reserved, as a need to know. Only certain family members, certain friends, are, if we're faith-based, our faith-based leaders may know, maybe our, doctors, but, I'm glad, as we, fast forward to today, that they're not so taboo anymore.
Not as much, but it's still there for some of it.
There is still there for some, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's why we're here to just sit and talk about it. Talk about how it affects our lives at different points. Just like I said earlier, going through certain holidays or certain dates, and we've talked about that, in previous episodes, and it's for me right now during this time, it's building up to the anniversary of my husband's death.
And for me with St. Patrick's Day, it's funny because I'm not Irish. You think? But I'm not Irish. And so when I always thought of St. Patrick's Day, it was always wear green so you didn't get pinched.
Right.
I never really understood the whole corned beef and cabbage.
I really don't know where it comes from either. It's just a tradition.
However, for me, having a son named Patrick, whenever it was St. Patrick's Day, it became a thing where, he would get up in the morning, it's my day. It is, and his, flair, and how he, verbalized things or whatnot. But he'd go around, with, he had this expression that, be like, my day.
My day. I could just imagine that.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, my father-in-law's name was Patrick Joseph.
And,
Yeah. I mean, he's been gone almost around 20 years, but he was a really great guy, man. I know he was waiting there for his son when that time came. So, yeah, another milestone that comes around every year. Sometimes it gets easier, and sometimes it doesn't. But we want to reflect on a couple of the last touchstones in Bill of Rights for suicide loss survivors, and it's kind of coming up at a good time personally for me. Touchstone 9 talks about seeking reconciliation and not resolution. And Dr. Wolfelt has a quote in here at the very beginning: unless you believe you are worthy of reconciliation and healing your suicide grief, you will question it, inhibit it, deny it, or push it away. And that's something that I have gone back and forth with, actually, over the last few years. He also says here, if you follow the trail markers on your journey through the wilderness, you will find your way out. But just as with any significant experience in your life, the wilderness will always live inside you and be a part of who you are.
I really enjoyed, what he included in this particular touchstone. Some of it, jumped out at me. I was like, I don't know that I think of it that way, or, yeah, I thought of it that way, but worded a little differently. I like what he says. He goes, my personal and professional experience tells me that a return to, quote, normalcy, unquote, after death of someone loved is not possible. We are all forever changed by the experience of grief. And that one struck me, because it was like, well, first of all, look at what is normal anyway. How do people say, well, your life is normal, or you need to return to some kind of norm. I believe it's like normal is however we choose to define it. When you add in the loss of somebody, and it's not like, Bobby's off on a surveyor's, convention, he's going to be gone for a few days and he's coming back home. Or, Patrick decided, what, Mom, I'm moving out of the house. I'm going to go get my, I'm going to move into my own place. Or, Aiden is graduating, high school, and he's going off to college. what I think of, and use Aiden, just for a moment. When we were talking to, I was talking to his sister, and she had made the comment that what makes it, quote unquote, normal for her is she processes in her head, Aiden's visiting Nana. And by, looking at it or processing it that he's on vacation in Florida with Nana, that normalizes his loss to her, or for her, and in some small ways minimizes the anger that she feels.
That she still carries.
Because she is, angry, with her brother, and and it goes in ebbs and flows. I was watching, like, this past weekend. She had posted something on her, on a social media page, that it was, I want to say it was 2 days in a row that she felt normal. And, of course, the third day, it was like, really? Only 2 days? Am I not allowed to feel normal ever again? And, I which is what I like, here, in this touchstone, that, he uses the term reconciliation, instead of closure, return to normal.
Well, yeah, because then we've talked about it a lot. There is no normal anymore, whatever that may have been, in the past. There's no resolution, because how do you ever understand that? And
I look at it a little differently. I see it as there is a normal, but it's a new normal.
Yeah.
Or there's it's the reconciliation comes with, as hard as it may be, the acceptance that, Bobby, Aiden, Patrick, whoever we lost is gone. It's, I know our grief, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm sure this is for you. There are some days where I'm still grieving, but I don't feel it. And then there are other days where it hits me like a ton of bricks. The first, like when I first, was told Aiden's gone, Patrick's gone. And that first few weeks of, nonstop, the wind would blow and I would just burst out in tears. And I'm an internalizer. It's difficult sometimes for me to express what I'm feeling. So, to have, to go through that loss, and then all of a sudden, there's these emotions that, under other circumstances, I learned to suppress over the years. It is different for each of us.
well, and he says in here, I don't know where it is exactly. I knew I should have. He has a excerpt from a book, Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis. There was no sudden, striking, and emotional transition, like the warming of a room or the coming of daylight. When you first notice them, they have already been going on for some time. Reconciliation, he also has here, and it just, my mind kind of has been going through this, especially maybe the last couple weeks. With reconciliation comes a renewed sense of energy and confidence, an ability to fully acknowledge the reality of the death, and the capacity to become re-involved in the activities of living. And part of that, in which we have talked about before, is in doing something and you have moments of happiness and joy, and then there could almost immediately come that, what am I doing? You know,
Why am I happy?
yeah, and the feeling, as brief as it could be at times, feels really good, and you want more of it, but then it's like, what am I doing?
It is
You know?
almost like a feeling of guilt.
Yeah.
Like I find myself oftentimes, like say when I'm cleaning the garage, when I'm working, doing something out in the garage, and which was a monthly. And I joked about this, several times, where Patrick and I would go, "Oh, the garage is a mess. Let's go, reorganize it." And we'd organize the garage, and then 2 weeks later, can we just clean the garage? Why does it look like this again? Like, why can't we just leave the garage, as, and I don't know, it was like unconsciously, we would, things in the garage would come out of place again, of course, all right, it's time for us to do the garage again. And I find myself, oftentimes, going in, and doing the garage and then standing back and it's like, wow, this really looks good. Everything is organized. And then I, in that same instance, I find myself saying, and if only you were here to see this. Put different shelves, took all the wooden, cabinets out of the garage and replace it with metal shelving.
Mm-hmm.
And, I find myself, Patrick, if only you were here to see this. Or I look at the multitudes of the camping chairs, the folding chairs. And it's like, these are Patrick, 90% of them Patrick bought. And his friends would come over and they'd sit in the backyard and just chill. Or, as I'm doing, the patio in the backyard, which was, that was, Patrick's place. I have one of those plastic Adirondack chairs. And someone, some friends over, and I forget what it was, somebody sat on it and, part of it cracked. And I was like, oh my God, Patrick's chair is broken. And I find myself saying, okay, it's, do I keep it or do I toss it? And it's like, well, it's not broken to the point that it really needs to be tossed. At the same time, it's like, I can't toss that chair. That was, like, no one's sitting in this chair but Pat. And, so, like I said, going through these things where, wow, the patio really looks good. But Patrick's not here to enjoy it anymore. Oh, the garage really looks good. But Patrick's not here,
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I go through that a lot at my place. We have a workshop out back by the lake, and I've actually cleaned it out 3 times since he's been gone. And every time I go through something or change something, I'm like, hey, hon, doesn't this look really good? Or you really should be here helping me do this. But with our property. Even a couple of years ago, we had started to put in a sprinkler system on our property over 20 years ago. And we had gotten 4 out of 6 zones in. And so a couple of years ago, my aunt was here, and I decided, I'm going to finish the sprinkler system because we were doing some planning around the house. And so I completed one whole zone that during that period. And I was like, wow, doesn't this look good, hon? Now I have one more zone to do, and it's the last one. And I put out the flags yesterday, as a matter of fact, as to where the sprinkler heads were going. But it's like, you're supposed to be here doing this stuff with me. Mm. And it kind of goes where he says here, when you're working through your grief, you have the intellectual part of working through it, which we probably do all the time, but the intellectual and the emotional and spiritual are kind of separate from that inner intellectual part of it.
Absolutely. It's like, from an intellectual processing part, we all understand that we have the beginning of life, and eventually we're all going to, we're all going to pass away. We're all going to die. And, I don't know how many, some people like, oh, you're a little consumed with this feeling of death, like, this gloom and doom kind of thing. And I wonder if, some of us, or I'm sure that some of us at one point or another, ask the question, and I wonder when my number's up, how am I going to go? For me, I used to, when I was younger, I used to be like, I think I'm going to die in a car crash.
Oh, jeez.
It's going to be, well, I was a speed demon. I had a lead foot. And like my mother, I could not remember or understand, I couldn't understand why every time I got in a car, even now as an adult, in my 60s, if I'm driving somewhere, my mother's like, call me every time it's like, she'll call me periodically, where are you at? Are you okay? Mother, I'm fine. Mom, I'm fine. And after I got my driver's license, I remember my mom used to, again, call me every time. Didn't make sense. And then I realized, of course, something I found out, later I was 18, when I found out that my biological father, I never questioned my paternity before. I mean, I knew that the person who I grew up, calling, dad and father was not my bio dad, but I never really questioned where my bio dad was when I was a baby, when my mom and he married. But anyway, I found out my biological father died in a car crash.
Uh-huh.
And so, hearing now, I understand why my mother gets so nervous every time I get in a car. Because I'm the only child she had with him.
Right.
Now I understand. And again, I was, we use the term, I was lead-footed. And I was telling myself, it's going to be a car crash. Now it's like, is it going to be a car crash? With Patrick and Aiden, dying the way they did, some of the thoughts have become, when am I going to join you? I hope you two are okay and that you're with each other. They had a relationship. I hope you two are taking care of yourselves. You were taking care of each other, while at the same time, with friends who have also lost, their children. One of my good friends from school. Actually, I should say one. Several of my friends from school, and I think I shared that there's 5 or 6 of us women, in my graduating class, that we all have that thing in common where we all have lost a child, and we're like, well, we hope our children are up there, bonded and forged, the friendship up there that we have down here. So again, that I know I'm going to go someday, but I still process. I wasn't supposed to bury my child. My child was not supposed to go before, let alone my grandchild was not supposed to go before me. Now my child too. And this whole, how do you reconcile that, becomes, I don't want to say, it's not that it's difficult, but I truly understand, what he talks about here in the book, about the intellectual side of you and the emotional heart. It's like that debate between the heart and the head.
Well, yeah, because, you can sit there like, I know this really happened, but in my heart, and always, how and why, and even still saying, yeah, that really happened. It's it's difficult to connect all three of that, and I don't know that. Maybe down the road you might be able to do that at some point, but still, I don't. I think the intellectual part, for me, and it may change with time. The intellectual part's going to be separate than the emotional and the spiritual part.
Yeah, it's like in my head.
And
I've
I know.
understood that.
Yeah.
I know, or I understand. Hey,
Right.
we all got to go sometimes. But why'd you have to rip my heart out? Why?
Right. Yeah.
But seriously, did you have to take my heart too?
Yeah, exactly. Well, he has in here, and I went through this list and marked the ones that I felt like I'm in an okay place with, but he has a list of signs that you're on that road to reconciliation. And even a couple that I marked that I feel like I'm in an okay place with, it's not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like that cycle going forward and going backward, and 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So let's go through a couple of these and see what you feel, what you feel you are in an okay place with. Now, the first one was a recognition of the reality and the finality of the death. That at this point, yeah, that's pretty much there. You know, you can't really question it.
Acceptance.
You know, you just
Acceptance.
Yeah. And then one that I go back and forth with is a return to stable eating and sleeping. Sometimes I have a hard time. I think the hardest time for me is in the evenings when it's time to go to bed.
Mm.
That's my most difficult time. The eating, that's getting better because I did start cooking again, and that was one of the things that we like to do together. So that's good.
See, for me, the whole eating, sleeping thing, you know, that was out the window even before the death, because although I eat when I do eat, I do eat healthy, but I don't eat consistently. And the same with sleeping. I function on a couple. If I get more than 5 hours of sleep, I can't function. I do not sleep a lot. I did notice that there are times that I do go through periods of binge eating. It's like I'm not. I don't like a lot of sugar. However, I've found myself from time to time, oh, those donuts look really good. I think I'll buy this dozen donuts. And before I know it, the dozen donuts is gone. I just ate at 6 o'clock. It's 6:30 and I'm hungry again. What's going on here?
Right.
The same with sleeping. It's like I'm used to going to bed, midnight. It's like midnight is just like, okay, I'm winding down. There have been periods of time where, it's 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I'm going to my room and I'm watching something, watching the news or whatever I watch on TV, and I fall asleep. But then I'm awake at 1 o'clock in the morning. So it's like, all right, Bonnie, you really need to, kind of back things up and get back into, like discipline myself.
Right.
To, go back to, what is that norm, whatever that norm is or was.
Well, I went an experience with the eating a couple of years ago. For about 5 months, I went through a pretty decent depression. And I realized when I realized that what was happening, that I was eating a lot of processed foods. Bobby and I always ate fairly healthy. I mean, we weren't fanatics about it, but we started that when he was diagnosed with MS. And so I noticed that during that time period, I was like clipping coupons and like, oh, I've never tried this before. Let me try this. And it was all processed foods. And when I realized what was happening, I was like, oh boy, you got to get back to eating the way that you're used to eating, whole foods, cooking, from scratch. And that really made a big difference in my mental health, was eating better.
You know, it makes me think too, like the day after Patrick had died, the team that I work on, my coworkers, one of our team members, is a nurse. And I didn't realize, I thank God for the team that I work on, because they were just amazing. I mean, they became my rock, getting me through this. But anyway, the nurse on our team, I remember calling me, and she's like, "Have you eaten yet?" And because here I am, I'm bawling my eyes out. What do you mean, have I eaten yet?
Oh, that's the last thing you want to think about.
And and actually, no. Let me take that back. She didn't ask me had I eaten yet. Like I said, you should call me or text. One of the was either a call or a text. What is your address? That's my address. And so I, sent her. I don't know if I sent her a text message right away, but then I think she ended up calling me. I need your address. I bought, I'm bringing you breakfast. It's not, basically, it was not negotiable. I was going to eat breakfast. And in my head, I'm like, a part of me was like looking at the phone like, who are you to tell me whether or not I'm going to eat or not? Like, I wasn't really hungry. And, but she was adamant. I'm bringing you, something to eat. Now thankfully it was something light. But, she came over and, I just remember, sitting on the couch. It was, underneath, on a blanket. I'm like sitting like this, blanket's over here. And, she handed me, what she had bought to eat. And I'm like bawling my eyes out. And she's like, you're going to eat this. You are going to eat. It is imperative. And I'm thinking, I don't feel like arguing with her. I really don't feel like arguing with her. So, and eating. And then I thought to myself, like looking back on it now, it was like, she was right. I needed to eat. And, for that, that day, and I want to say the next day, it was like people on the team, our supervisor, I think our supervisor and our manager, I think, had orchestrated this. And again, my, a lot of things for this. Who's going to her house? So it was like, oh, you're going to be there from, 8 to noon. And then when noon, you're going to take over. And so another team member came in like from noon to 4, and then another team member came in from like 4 to 6. Then my nephew, would come over, and then he was with me until I fell asleep. But that, it was like, we're going to, like the whole day, they made sure, like whoever had the noon shift, you're eating lunch. And it wasn't, like, no. You're, even if it's 2 or 3 bites, you're going to eat.
Right.
And again, I'm grateful for that, because it was like, yes, I really, I can process, the fact that my son is gone. I also had to be mindful that I needed to take care of me.
Right. Yeah. Within 3 days of Bobby's death, my aunt was here from Oregon for 2 weeks. And thank goodness, and I told her not to come at first. And again, there was, no, it wasn't an option. And I remember her fixing stuff for me to eat and putting it in front of me, because you just don't, you don't feel hungry, you just don't want to eat. And then she was like, just, even if it's just a little bit. But for 2 weeks, she made sure that I ate, and ate healthy. And yeah, thank goodness for that, because I probably wouldn't have eaten if, and people brought food and everything, but it was like, and I was super appreciative of it, but I didn't feel like eating. And I didn't feel like cooking for years, for a couple of years. I mean, I just, maybe within the past year. And when I first started cooking meals for myself, I would cook them, I'd make everything, and then I'd just put it in the refrigerator. I couldn't eat it. And that went on for several months. But now that's getting a lot better. I made an entire St. Patrick's Day dinner yesterday. And I ate it. So that that's one part moving forward. A couple of them that I did not mark out. And we've talked about this earlier. The capacity to enjoy experiences in life that are normally enjoyable. A renewed sense of release from the person who has died. You will have thoughts about the person, but you will not be preoccupied by these thoughts. That comes and goes.
For me as well. Yeah, for me as well. Yeah, it is. That process of when I find myself having days, and here of late, I don't know if I would have it rise to the level of a complete I can't say the word, being, completely preoccupied.
Right.
But Patrick's like forefront, again, I'll be in my room and I could see, my kitchen, from my room, it's like my bedroom door is here and, kitchen's like over here. And occasionally, I'll look up and I'll see and I'm like, well, it's not my nephew, he's, in his room. It's not my grandson, he's with his mom, for, the spring break, he's with his mom for, the spring break. Pat, is that you? No, he's just getting something to eat. And then my brain goes back to, wait a minute. He's not, it's like, he's not here. But yes, he is here, and, making sure that there's this balance between remembering him, because I find sometimes, too, with some of us, when we dismiss things like that, it also goes back to, am I dismissing his memory?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when things like that happen at my house, I mean, even sometimes I'll be in the bedroom, and I have, a couple cats, and I hear things out in the other part of the house, and I'll get up and go out there, and it couldn't have been the cats doing anything, and I'm like, okay, Hannah, what are you doing? I hear you, but, what's going on? Or I'll be, one of the worst things, and this started happening right after Bobby passed away. And it always happens in my truck. I'll be driving somewhere, and I hear a bird whistle. Now, there's no way there's a bird in my truck. The windows are up, the AC is on, and usually it'll happen, like, I'll either drive by something or something will happen, or that somehow in some reality is attached to him. And it's like, hey, okay, I know you're here with me, but okay. Yeah, it's, I don't think it, and I don't think, I mean, I think for you and I particularly, when the things like that happen, dismissing it isn't even a part of reality of ours.
No.
Because of the way we believe.
Yeah, I don't think we ever, totally dismiss the memory. It makes me, it's like the segue into the capacity to live a full life without feelings of guilt or lack of self-respect. And that one resonates with me a lot because, again, if I'm doing something, or, cleaning out the closet. Like right now, it's almost, it's coming up on 2 years now. Patrick's closet still has all of his clothing hanging in it. You have not emptied his closet. I've got, his clothing in, one of those plastic totes. It's in the closet. Changed the furniture, in his room. That was in his room. But I won't get rid of his stuff. And part of it, I'll concede, part of the reason, that not getting rid of his clothing, it's, Devin, it's like, I want you to save daddy's stuff so that when I get big, I can wear it.
Mm-hmm.
And, Patrick always kept his clothing, in immaculate, condition. So it's like, okay, so granted, it's going to be another, 15, 20 years before, Devin might be able to fit them. At the same time, Patrick's shoes, he wear a size 11, 12. It's like, I'm not going to wear them, his T-shirts are one thing. But again, that guilt of, do I get rid of, again, it's like I said, it's like I'm giving my son away, and I can't do that.
That something similar like that happened to me with my first husband's death, which was a work accident, and my grandmother came to stay with me. And one day I was out delivering some artwork that I framed. This is when I lived in South Florida, and I came home, and she had donated all my husband's clothes while I was gone. And that totally freaked me out. Because I didn't have any say in any of it. I just came home and they were gone. When Michael passed and my aunt was here, my grandma was her mother, so that was kind of ironic. My grandma was here for my first husband's death, and then my aunt was here for Bobby's. My grandma had passed away. But I had made the decision, and it was within those first 2 weeks, probably towards the end of it. And a lot of it came from working with organizations in the community and volunteering. So I knew where I could donate his clothes that would be the most effective. And so her and I did that. Although I did keep some of his shirts that I knew that were his favorites. I gave a couple of them to a friend of ours that is also a land surveyor. And I have a big tub of his T-shirts. I had mentioned before I want to make a quilt out of them. Maybe 2 quilts out of them. That's how many are there. But, and I did, the second time, when I did it, it was me. I made that choice. I had the choice. The first time I didn't, and I was at that time kind of surprised how much it affected me when that happened. Versus I felt good about where Bobby's clothes, his work boots, were going to help somebody who really needed them that couldn't afford them. And so, yeah, and that kind of goes into this one I've been kind of reflecting on a lot, the drive to organize and plan one's life forward toward the future. I finally kind of feel like I'm getting there, even though looking back, and it's not me really looking back, it's people telling me that in a way I've kind of already been doing that, but I don't see it. People have to point it out to me, and then I'm like, oh yeah, well I guess. But yeah, it's starting to feel more that way now.
And I think, when I think of, the future, I'm planning for it. I find myself, I, jokingly said to someone, and again, this is where that, some of the guilt, comes in, starting 4 years ago. I might have my numbers wrong. My the grandchildren I have. But let's say if I, starting 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, for the next, 15 years, give or take, I will have a grandchild graduating from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And, I sat back and I thought, oh, when I get to, let's see, so this is 21, 23, 24. So when I get to the graduating class of 24, 25, which is, like I said, maybe up a year. That would have been a year that Aiden and my daughter's daughter would have graduated. And I found myself, okay, let's see, how's this going to work? Because, Aiden's in the Midwest. My daughter's, her name is Jaquila. Jaquila is here in Florida. I hope their graduations do not happen at the same time, or on the same weekend, because I don't want to fly to Kansas for Aiden's weekend, graduation, and then fly here, or well, I'm not going to either one of you guys' graduations because he was born in February. She was born in April. So it's like, all right, so whose graduation do I miss? Oh, hopefully I do.
Right.
To now it's like, oh, I don't have to worry about, we'll do a symbolic graduation perhaps for Aiden. I'll be here for hers. The other things I think of is, like with Pat, I think of, the two children that we don't see.
Right.
What's his little, what is, for Devin, what's his little brother doing? What's his little sister like? His birthday is coming up in July. What are they doing? And not being able to experience, them, when they go to high school, they graduate, or when she, when and if they decide to marry. That's some of the sad parts of it.
Yeah, I could see that. That would be very, very hard. How about the serenity to become comfortable with the way things are, rather than attempting to make things as they were?
Yes. That's that. Goes along with that acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like it.
No.
And I think that's, it feels like, I don't like this. Okay. You're not supposed to like it, or it's okay. Not you're not supposed to, let me rephrase that. It's okay not to like it. It's important that, we process and become comfortable in that we don't, I don't like going to the dentist,
Right.
At the same time, the dentist that I go to, I love, him because, in a platonic mind kind of way. But I love my dentist because, he understands, he was like, well, if you were happy to come and see me, I would think there's something wrong. So it's like, we don't have to like things. We accept them as part of our lives, so, using the dentist, I don't like going to the dentist.
Right.
But I enjoy, I am comfortable with the dentist that I have because he understands, my feelings. I don't like going to the doctor. However, I would not trade my primary care doctor for anything in the world. I don't like the fact that we have lost loved ones. I've learned to, accept and live without them. My life doesn't end because my life is different. Life as I know it is different,
Mm-hmm.
but life has not ended.
Well, and that's what he's kind of says here. You have to go on living. Like earlier when you had mentioned about when am I going to join you?
Mm-hmm.
Bobby and I had this kind of like a running joke that because I want to live to be 100 if I'm healthy. And so he was 8 years older than me, so I was like, you have to live to be 108.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, now he didn't live up to that. And I'm like, And I've had this conversation with him. And I'm like, I would really like to be there with you, but I still want to live to be 100. So, and in a way, it's probably better for you because you probably don't want to see me right now. So maybe 40 years down the road, when we meet up again, it'll be okay.
Well, and that's interesting because, I think of, I had a cousin and a nephew who were diagnosed with cancer, respectively. And, I used to refer to it as the three-legged stool because the three of us were all diagnosed at the same time. Now, unfortunately, their cancers were, aggressive, and they lost their battle. And I'm going to join you. But I remember at their respective services, I found like a meaning or a purpose. And I was like, guys, I remember the conversations that we had along the journey, as we were navigating our respective journeys, so we could talk to each other about what was going on. Nobody understands. Yes,
Right.
We say, you don't understand what it's like to be in my shoes if you've never been in my shoes. At the same time, I am a firm believer in, even if you've experienced the same thing, you have an idea, you still don't process it, the same way that I do.
Everybody processes differently.
But I remember, as, again, at their respective services, I said, my mission in life now is to kick this in its butt for the three of us, and carry that forward. And I think, using that experience and applying it to, losing, Aiden, Patrick, Bob, like with this platform. You know what? You're not here. But here's, your death has meaning, or I'm using your death, for a larger purpose.
Well, yeah, and he mentions that in here too, is to keep believing in yourself and, learn to live and love again. The touchstone for this one here, and I think is, having the right to hope. And we're not going to get through what we were planning on the last chapter and the last test. So we'll do it next week. But hope is an expectation of a good that has yet to be. I have the need and the right to have hope for my continued life. I have hope and joy in my life and still miss and love the person who died.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to, almost the last sentence in the next chapter, we'll go through the next chapter next week. But he says here, and I highlighted it, say yes to life and no to suicide.
Absolutely.
And that is very important for suicide loss survivors because we are at a higher rate at risk for suicide than the general public. And we want all of you, please, to say yes to life.
Absolutely. And understand and know that there are, resources out there for you. We have, the purple folder that, Tammy, the foundation put together, for loss survivors to, connect you to resources. There are, organizations all over, that deal with this, be it.
There's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. There's another one, the Association for Suicide Prevention. We have the emergency numbers available. And if you or anybody you know is having issues, please call, reach out. If it's an emergency, just call 911.
Absolutely.
there are people out there to help you. And we want people to feel that you're not alone, whether you're in that mindset of contemplating or if you're in the situation that we're in, living with the aftermath. We just want everybody to know that there's people out there that love you, that are willing to help. I had a friend of mine just yesterday, well, he called me at the beginning of the week, and I wasn't returning his calls or his texts. And I got a little bit of a lecture yesterday because he was worried about me, you know. So thankfully I'm not in that mindset, but it was nice to know that there was somebody out there that was concerned enough to reach out and make sure. I promise that I will always return his texts and return his calls in a timely manner. So we really want to thank you for spending the time with us. We know it can be difficult. Hopefully pretty soon we will have our t-shirts available. Still waiting to hear from that we could use as a fundraiser. Any last minute?
Always thank you to WeBeam TV, and remember,
There's always hope. Thank you.